hat look? I feel like it makes my already big head even like bigger. Look at it.
When we put it on like that.
Hattie! Hey guys, it's Cam from Craft and Tailored, and in this episode of What Is On My Wrist, we're talking about an Omega Seamaster 300 from 1966. The reference is 165.024. Let's dive into the details. Get it? Dive in, because it's a dive watch. Nick, diving in. Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry, it's been a long day. I haven't had enough coffee. I'm trying to be entertaining. There's a bird flying outside right now. Okay. We haven't had a Seamaster 300 yet on the channel. It's not because I don't want to put one on the channel. I actually like Seamaster 300s. We've had a good number of them in our collection, and I figured it would be a good time to kind of highlight a reference that we have available, as well as talk about the reference as a whole, as they're incredible watches and most def worthy of some wrist time. So the Omega Seamaster 300 reference 165.024 features a no date, and the 166.024 features a date. I think there's something truly unique about the early vintage Seamaster 300s. You know, a lot of these watches that came out of the 1950s, 1960s into the 70s kind of embody that perfect traditional iconic dive watch design. These watches were intended to be tools, and the build quality of these watches, the design characteristics, this is a tool watch through and through. So I love watches that come out of that era. I'm a big fan of tool watches, in general, and the Seamaster 300s kind of perfectly embody all of that feeling. What's interesting about the 300 is you see things in the 300 that you don't see in a Rolex. One thing is that you have the 3, the 6, and the 9 on the dial. If that was, a Rolex Submariner with what we would call an Explorer style dial, we'd be looking at a watch in, the $200,000 to $300,000 price range, no doubt. In the Seamaster 300, it's something that is a kind of a mainstay of the reference series and of the design of the 300 series watches. Another unique feature of the watch is that the 300s have a fully gradiated bezel, whereas the 5513, you only have the hash marks up to the 15-minute mark, unless it's a mil sub, and the mil sub has the hash marks all the way around. The other interesting thing is that we see kind of this broad arrow sweep seconds hand, as well as either in the early references like this example from 1966, the pencil style hands, or what they call the gladiator style hands, where we see like a kite hand that is the hour hand, and then a sword hand for the minute. And the reason why we see that differentiation in the hands is so that you can differentiate between the hours and minutes at a glance while wearing it on the wrist. Additionally, the Seamaster 300 in the 165.0 series was also used by the British Royal Navy and was issued as a dive watch to the British Royal Navy. And so their tech requirements for their watches required a fully gradiated bezel, as well as a differentiating set of hands in their spec, which you'll see in like the Rolex 5513s and or the 5517 mil subs, but it's kind of a stock staple thing with the Seamaster 300s. And I don't know if the reason why we see that in the later 300s is if that kind of design feature stemmed from the military requirement, or if it was something that they had just kind of done and the military adopted that as well. But if you compare a mil sub to a later 165.024 Seamaster 300, you'll see common characteristics between the mil sub and just kind of your stock standard big triangle Seamaster 300, whether it was civilian issue and or military issue, which is kind of interesting. One unique feature about the 300s is that we have this Bakelite outer rotating bezel, which is really interesting. The bezel itself is actually luminous filled, so that's kind of an interesting design feature. You see that with Blancpains, you don't see that with Rolex, but you do see it with the 300. Additionally, what's interesting is that the bezel is bi-directional, but there actually is a click spring in it as well, which I think is a nice design feature, and the bezel itself actually sits up nicely on the watch. You know, if I was a diver and I had gloves on, I feel like this bezel would operate quite nicely, whereas the Rolex, Submariner bezel in the 5513 and in the 1680 range, or even in a Sea Dweller, it could kind of be hard to operate with gloves. I feel like this, in many cases, is a more optimal design. I am by no means poo-pooing Rolex. Obviously a huge, clear fan of Rolex vintage divers, without a doubt. Just trying to provide you with a comparison of the watch. Additionally, what's interesting as well is that in the 300s, we see an integrated crown guard. So what we have is a kind of this asymmetrical twisted lug style case. This case is also very much similar to what we would see in an Omega Speedmaster. You have these kind of Bombay twisted lugs, and then you have brush finishing on the side of the case, brush finishing on the twist, and then the top side of the lug or the other twist is polished. So a really interesting kind of handsome watch to wear. Also, the integrated crown guards, or this kind of asymmetrical style case, is kind of a unique design feature of the watch that carried through for a long time. And you can also see that in the Speedmaster Professional series, where you kind of have that integrated crown guard, pusher guard in the later Omega Speedmaster Professional series. So really, really interesting watch. This specific example from 66 is really nice. There's a bunch of different variants that we could kind of go through in the Seamaster range. If you check out our website, I'll provide a link in the description below, but you can go through all of the Seamaster 300s that we've had and kind of like pick up on the little characteristics, and we highlight that in the product listings on our website so that you can kind of learn from those product listings. But what's interesting is this example from 66 is early. It's pre-Gladiator hands, so it has kind of the pencil style hands, and it's pre-big triangle. So the marker at the 12 o'clock position is a little bit smaller than a big triangle, which gets its nickname from the big triangular 12 o'clock marker. The other thing that's nice about this too is it retains its original bezel insert itself. These are Bakelite and they will show some wear and degradation. Interestingly enough, the Seamaster 300 series in the Bakelite or the plastic or acrylic or whatever they were using seems to actually hold up really, really well in comparison to, let's say, like a Blancpain or like a Rolex Bakelite GMT. Those bezels are prone to cracking. Not saying that these are exempt from that, but typically these bezels in the vintage, versions I find them much more intact, which is kind of interesting. This one is the original and it has the flat one. So at the 10 o'clock, the 1 and 10 is actually flat, David, flat 1, right? Instead of being a slanted 1 or anything like that. So this is the original bezel insert for a 66, which is a kind of nice thing to have. Additionally, Omega updated the crowns throughout the 300 series as the reference kind of progressed, similar to Rolex, for example, using a twin lock series crown on the 5513 and then eventually moving to a trip lock crown. Same thing with Omega. You have kind of this, it's not really even a locking crown on the earlier series. It's just a push crown, but it's a flat crown as opposed to the more domed locking crown that you would find on the later variants from the later part of the 60s into the 1970s. So in any case, I really like this watch. I've got this on I believe this is our smooth calf in Stampede. It's one of my favorite straps that we've just brought into the Craft and Tailored strap shop recently. It has kind of this like interesting gray, browny, black kind of coloration, and it pairs really well with vintage watches, especially ones that have kind of a patina to the dial, which this example definitely does have. So I'll provide a link in the description below so you can check out this strap and others as well. But in any case, thanks for tuning in, guys. Like always, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll provide a link in the description below so that you can check this version out and the other Seamaster 300s that we've had within our collection. And for the latest updates and news from Craft and Tailor, be sure to follow us on Instagram. Thanks again for tuning in, guys. I'll see you in the next one.